back, say something else. Part of the process as we try to come up with projects is that there's a dialogue that goes on between FDA and Reagan-Udall for usually a period of time about projects and what projects we think are really appropriate. And so as we move through that process, at certain points in time we make decisions. We make decisions about can we go forward conceptually? Is this about the right scope? Are we okay with the funders? And then we go out and work on getting funding. When we come back, then the board as well as FDA has to approve the final scope of the project and the actual funding mechanisms and amounts from various. So we have a lot of checks and balances and points in time when we look at these projects. But the ideas can come from anywhere. They can come from FDA, they can come from the Reagan-Udall board, they can come from some of you. So let me go back to that middle box and talk about our second project, the oncology toxicology project. Again, this one was more what I think of as an idea project, where we were concerned about toxicity in oncology drugs. We pulled a group together from FDA, NIH, academia, advocates, and drug developers to evaluate the idea, could we use systems biology and related technologies and in preclinical safety testing. So we convened a one-day meeting, and if you want to look at who was at that one-day meeting, you can go onto our website, look at this project, and click on that, and you'll see who was sitting at the table and who the public-private partnership group was that came up with these ideas. But we convened a one-day meeting in July at the FDA and to discuss kind of a proof of concept project. And the initial funding came from the Susan G. Komen for the Cure. So from the workshop, and in the workshop we basically talked about who had what data, what sorts of things could we put together, what would be a way to narrow this whole idea down to a very specific kind of proof of concept project. So we ended up deciding that we wanted to look at characterization of prediction of cardiotoxicity associated with TKIs, a class of oncology drugs. This is, again, a proof of concept. So if this process that we're going through works, then we may go back and we may look at liver toxicity, or we may look at a different class of drugs. But this is, a good place to start. And you'll see there's kind of a theme in a lot of the things we're working on, that we're going to start with a pilot. Let's try something, see how it works, and then we'll double back. So we do short-term and long-term goals. So the project components, as you can see on this list, really have to do with compiling data, looking at a couple of different approaches, and then performance of key studies to generate needed data, test predictive common pathways, and then identification of the linkage of these pathways to clinical biomarkers. So phase one, if you think of that as the preliminary phase, we're trying to come up with some specific curated TKI-induced cardiotoxicity databases. Again, the whole phase one, the theme of all of this is creating common information, pulling together all of the group's databases in such a way that it adds knowledge and is put out in the public domain so that other people who are studying this are going to be able to use it. So besides the database, we're looking at creating an ontology model and then identifying key toxicological pathways and networks from that model. And there will be a website and a page for external communication with the research community. And then at the end of phase one, there'll be a write-up, a manuscript, it'll be published, and then we'll go on to phase two, which will probably be a longer-term project. So where we are in this project is we did fund at the very beginning. We're getting ready. We're in the process of funding phase, the phase one that I just talked about. So we'll have to double back again, as I said, and talk to the board and talk to the FDA, make sure everybody's on board, they don't have any changes, and then we will secure funding for this part.